and thanks for being on. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Like you said, my name is Jason Lederfine. I'm the current Chief Operating Officer for Cage Fury Fighting Championships. We have our shows on UFC Fight Pass. We do, anywhere from 20 to 30 events a year with professional grappling, our Next Gen series, which is our amateur portion of it, and our MMA. So we do them all over the country, from Atlantic City, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Tampa, Florida. This year we went to Rockford, Illinois. We've been in North Dakota, California. This year we'll also be going to Cincinnati for our first time in a couple of weeks, and also Bristol, Virginia.
That's awesome. So how did you get involved in all that?
Well, about 10 so years ago, I went to an event, V3 Fights, here in Memphis, Tennessee, the area I live in. I got free tickets on VetTix, which is an organization that donates tickets to veterans and first responders. And I just happened to know one of the matchmakers because I was coaching wrestling at the time at a high school, and he was a wrestling coach as well. And I said, hey, I was 34 at the time. I said, I'd love to train again and get back in there and do this. And I did. And I ended up selling more tickets than pretty much everybody on the card, and, got a lot of attention on social media. And I raised a bunch of money for a charity while doing it. And after the fight, I had asked the owner, I said, hey, I noticed nobody's really doing anything with your social media. How about I take that over for you? And he said, absolutely, go for it. So the very next show I went to, I think, was in April. And I was just there to kind of cover it as a social media guy. And one of the broadcasters had a falling out with the owner and didn't show up. And they said, hey, would you want to do the post-fight interviews after the fights? I said, yeah, absolutely. So I did that. And then I got hired as the broadcast, as an analyst to be on the broadcast. And it just continued from there and there and there. And I became the director of operations for V3 in Memphis. And then when COVID happened, Cage Fury, who we'd worked with before previously in Alliance MMA, we had a really good relationship with and a lot of respect for, they were in a bad position because New Jersey had said, no more shows. We're not doing any during COVID. And PA was like, we don't know if we're going to do shows. And we went to him and said, look, why don't we just merge as one company, because we can still do shows in our casinos in Mississippi. And why don't we try to expand now to Florida, because Florida is still open. And so we did that. Now I've been with CFFC for 6 years.
That's awesome. So you were talking about training and getting back into it. What's your martial arts background?
Well, so I'd wrestled since I was a freshman in high school. I continued wrestling in the Army, and I'd actually won the All Armed Forces Championship, which would have qualified me to try out for the All Army team. Unfortunately, deployment stopped it. So I had to go to Iraq, which basically, put an end to my career. So here I was, in my early 20s. I'd loved competing. I loved doing it, and it stopped. Then you get married, you have a family, and, you have work, and all those things kind of subside for you, especially when you're in the military. So I had continued when I moved. I got out of the Army and I moved to the Memphis area. I was coaching at a high school, coaching wrestling. So I still had a desire to compete. And, they say that motivation is both purpose and direction. You can say, hey, I want to get in shape. But if you don't really have a purpose for it, it's a lot more difficult. So I said, I'm going to take a fight so I can compete again. And I actually have a reason to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and go for a run. And I have a reason to go run on my lunch. And I have a reason to go to practice it every single night. And that provided me the motivation to do it. And I wouldn't be here today without that one event that I got tickets for on VetTix.
Absolutely. That's awesome, man. It's crazy how things work out like that. So you see a lot of amateurs coming in. Like, do you guys do professional? Like, is your organization professional, or do they accept amateurs? How does that work?
So most of our shows are all heavy professional because we're on UFC Fight Pass. So Fight Pass only allows professional fights. We do sometimes, most of our shows will have a couple amateur bouts on the prelims. And we actually just started a Next Gen series, which is what we call our amateurs. We call them the Next Gen because that's really what our amateurs are, the next generation of professionals. And we started a series in Atlantic City where we do an all amateur show for the best Next Gen guys in the country. And what we do for them is we actually will give their coaches a stipend so that these coaches don't have to leave their gym, and leave, getting paid and cancel classes, so that they're actually getting financially taken care of. We help pay for medicals, and we'll fly guys in from anywhere around the country or world that we think are the best next in-line amateurs to come to our professional ranks. And one of the great things is you get a lot of those medicals in New Jersey that are very, very tough. You get those knocked out as an amateur. We help you pay for them so that when you become a professional, some of those things like the CT scan and stuff are already completed for you.
Hmm. That's awesome. That's awesome. So being a promoter, what's some of the things that you do that fans don't know about or don't see?
Well, I'm doing it right now. I do so much paperwork and so much logistics. I handle all the travel for everybody. So I'm booking all the flights. I handle and coordinate all the hotel rooms. I coordinate shuttles to and from airports to hotels or whatever it is. And then there's just a ton of paperwork. New Jersey and Illinois have a lot of paperwork that has to get done, and it has to be done a very specific way. For example, in Illinois, to be a corner, you have to fill out your license application. You have to provide a headshot photo. You have to provide your driver's license. Then you also have to take a written test and pass that. So I have to manage all of that paperwork, submit it all to the commission. And that's not just for the athlete. I have to do all that for the corners as well. So I'm going through that right now with New Jersey, having to do all their paperwork, all the medicals. So medicals for New Jersey for professional fighter is a physical by an MD or DO, an EKG, an eye exam by an ophthalmologist, a CT scan or MRI. Your blood work is HIV, Hep B, Hep C, and also CBC, PT, and PTT. So it's just a lot of moving pieces that you have to manage for an entire show that people just don't see. They get to an event, they don't realize we had to transport that cage from, New Jersey to Illinois or to Florida or to Virginia or to Cincinnati. Then we have to hire labor to help us take it out of the trailer so that we can build it. We have to set up a seating diagram. We have to hire a production truck. We have to fly in, the right people to do audio, video, cameramen, whatever it is. All people do, and that's what we want. We want people to just come in, sit down, and enjoy a great show and not have to understand all the things that go on. But 95% of the work is done before the first bell.
Yeah, I'm sure. And it's all there for a reason, it keeps the fighter safe and everything. So what's some of the biggest challenges that you face?
Well, again, I think a lot of it is last minute changes. I just had somebody pull out of a fight yesterday, for a fight that's this Friday. It's scrambling, trying to say, hey, are we going to find a replacement? Are we going to just drop that fight? Are we going to move it? Those are the logistics challenges with the sport, but we've got, great matchmakers, and we've got a deep pool of talent that we can draw from, but it's difficult, on fight week because, there's things that we can't control if somebody gets hurt and they pull out. The other part is we can get to weigh-ins and somebody doesn't make weight. And the opponent might say, you know what, I'm not taking it. If they don't make weight, I don't take the fight. So those are some of the real challenges about what we do in this sport. We just saw the UFC with Conor McGregor, hurting his knee within the first minute and the fight being over, a huge main event.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, but in Nevada, if a main event is canceled, the promotion is required by law to give a refund to anybody that asks for one. That's only if the main event happens. It gets changed. You'll notice in almost every fight promotion, one of the main things you'll see on a poster is fight card subject to change, because it does, and it's going to, and it's very rare that a card that's presented 2 months out is going to be the same one that happens on fight night. So those are the real challenges that we face. Is just there's a lot of things we can't control. We just did the show in Liberty Hill. We did our first outdoor show, and I can control everything. I can control the hotel we stay in. I can control all the things, but I can't control the weather.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what the weather was going to be. And up to about 24 hours out, it was showing it was going to rain, and we still didn't know if we were going to do the show. And fortunately, it worked out perfectly, but that's some of the stuff that is so stressful because there's things outside of our control.
Yeah. So I have a lot of people that are listening that are martial artists. What are some of the things you look for in a fighter?
Look, the first and foremost is someone that does what they need to get done. And I don't know if you know Eric Anders, a 20-fight UFC veteran.
Yeah.
I dealt with him back in V3. And if I told that guy, I need something from you, he'd say, I'm at work, I'll call you at 5 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, my phone rang. And whatever I told him I needed, I had that day or the next day. That was professionalism. Now, I've got people for this show. I've still got outstanding medicals. I've got outstanding licensing. And I had due dates. The due date was yesterday. So I'm having to chase people. So what we look for, one, is obviously we're looking for quality martial artists that have a proven track record. And we're looking for people that are going to get stuff done To us, selling tickets is probably the lowest category that we look for, where 95% of promotions, that's all they care about. They'll put a 1 in 10 guy out there as long as he sells a bunch of tickets, and they'll put him as a main event.
Yeah.
Where our brand sells tickets, our venues sell tickets, just being in Atlantic City at the Hard Rock Hotel, that sells tickets alone because it's such a sexy venue and it's such an amazing atmosphere that people that don't even know the sport know our brand and say, I hear these shows are amazing and we want to go. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for people that are committed to getting things done, getting their medicals done, licensing done, professionalism. They're sharing posts. They're available for interviews, social media, and they're showing, there's some guys we look on their social media, you'd never even know they were fighting. They don't post a single thing about it. They don't even, we spend money to give them graphics and pictures, with all the information on how to get tickets and how to watch it. They don't even share it.
See, I lost my train of thought.
And we look for guys, like it's regionally, when you're in the Northeast, out of Philly, there's a lot of people and there's a lot of talent out there where there's guys that are brown belts and black belts that are fighting as amateurs, that are making their amateur debuts, and they literally own their own gym. Where you go to places like, Tennessee, where I was doing shows, and you got white belts with their first stripe that are ready to fight, and they're going through, 5-6 amateur fights, and they don't even have a blue belt yet.
Yeah.
So you see such a difference from where you're coming from. And what's great about Philly is we've got, the New York market. It's only a 2-hour drive from New York. So you've got a ton of people there. Ray Longo's gym and a lot of good gyms out there. Philly has some amazing gyms. You've seen so many UFC fighters coming out of, really specifically one gym in the Philly area. And so that's what we're really looking for. We're looking for people that are hungry, and we're looking for people that are talented. And we look at things like your record. There's a guy like, hey, I'm 7-0. Okay, well, let me look at your opponents. Your opponents are a combined 4-36.
Yeah.
You're not 7-0. So with CFFC, the more we like you, the tougher the fight you're going to get on our organization, because we want to make sure that you're ready, because we're one of the biggest feeder leagues to the UFC. UFC comes to us when they need people, especially short notice people. They're coming to CFFC. They say, hey, I know you got a show in 2 weeks. We know who your card is. There's a bantamweight on that card. He's already training. We need him for our card. Let's go. And they know that if we have him on the card, that they're ready. They're ready to be in the UFC, and they've had tough fights, and they've had a tough road, and they've proven themselves. Our champions, that go to the UFC, all do exceptionally well. We have one of the highest winning percentages of our champions out of any UFC Fight Pass promotion there is. So we get our guys ready, and that's what we look for.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you do a lot with the UFC. Have you ever had any like starstruck moments? Like,
man, it's pretty cool. So I do announcing as well, and I announce a lot of I actually all of our grappling bouts. So I'm actually the announcer for the grappling. I'm the timekeeper for the grappling. I'm the scorekeeper for the grappling. I do it all from one place. And we did a show a couple of years ago where, we had the UFC just said, let's do a big ass card. Let me see if I can bring it up for you real quick to give you an idea of some of the names. It was absolutely, so we had Carla Esparza, Sean Brady, Craig Jones, Cowboy Cerrone, Joe Selecki, Clay Guida, Billy Corantillo, Chase Hooper, Hanato Moicano, Nicky Rod, Steve Mowry, who was the Bellator heavyweight, Neil Magny, Philip Rowe, John Piersma, Alex Caceres, Kevin Holland, Phil Hawes, Andre Petrosky, Jillian Robertson, and I got to announce all these people.
that's
so
awesome.
Here I am, getting to announce, UFC champions, UFC Hall of Famers, Craig Jones, Nicky Rod, some of the best grapplers on the planet in the history of the sport. And it's been really cool that I've gotten to do that, as an announcer. Like, how many other announcers outside of the UFC get to announce these guys? And so that's been really cool. And it's, we work with CM Punk. We just had Punk back at our Rockford, Illinois show a couple weeks ago, and I had to put a barricade up behind him because so many people were ready to just attack him as soon as he took his headset off. So I had to send him a text. I was like, dude, I got to take you out the back door so we can avoid all this. He's like, yeah, please do. And so as soon as he got up, people are just ready to attack. He's like, hey, I got to go to the bathroom, and I had to take him out the back door. We literally walked like a half mile around the building to avoid all the crowd so I could get him in his car and get him back home. But it's like, it's pretty cool to have a guy like CM Punk in your, in your contact list.
Yeah, that's awesome. How's he in person? I heard he's a great guy. Like, I've heard people talk about him.
The persona, the like totally clean and all that stuff, it's all true.
Yeah.
The guy's never smoked a cigarette. He's never had alcohol. He doesn't go party. As soon as the show's over, that guy is asleep within 10 minutes. I've had to wake him up on multiple times to make, he doesn't miss his flight the next morning, or he has missed his flight the next morning. But that guy is straight edge. He's compassionate. And the thing is he's so good that it blows my mind that he can stay that articulate about a sport, and he's not doing it every day. He's doing pro wrestling.
Yeah.
But I've heard him on some of our BJJ stuff where I'm like, dude, you sound like a 20-year black belt. You're describing things so well. So people try to discredit him, but his ability to get on a microphone and make even a boring fight sound great because he's so articulate and so excited about it. His post-fight interviews, I got people that want to fight for us just to get a post-fight interview from him.
Yeah.
Because he'll make the post-fight interview amazing as well. And people get to say, like, man, I got interviewed by CM Punk. How cool is that? So he's such a valuable aspect. But we've had a ton of commentators, a ton of people. Michael Chiesa, Dean Thomas, Chase Hooper. You name it, they've done commentary for us. Paul Felder started with us, not just as a fighter, but as a commentator. And now you see he's one of the absolute best in the world at what he does. And that's what CFFC does, is we get people ready. And that's the thing, is like, people will tell us, once I got to the UFC, after fighting for CFFC, there was almost no change. It was exactly the same. And so that's what we want. We want people to know what it's like at the big leagues before you get there. And so we develop you.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So where do you see MMA heading in the future?
Man, obviously it's the fastest growing sport in the world.
Yeah.
The huge Paramount Plus deal is obviously gotten a lot more eyes on with getting rid of the pay-per-view model. So I think you're getting a ton more viewers watching the sport. You saw those numbers with Jake Paul's, MMA event on Netflix. Obviously, whenever you have an event on Netflix where it's, streaming free, you're going to get a ton of viewers. I would be curious to know what the last show with Conor McGregor did. I know it was the biggest gate they've ever had. So I don't know what the pay-per-view numbers were. I should say streaming numbers are, but I'm sure they're huge, and it's just going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Absolutely. Is there anything that you would change about the sport? I know a lot of people talk about the gloves with the eye pokes.
I think it's just a better enforcement of the rules. The rule is very, very simple. You cannot have your fingers pointed outwards at an opponent in an offensive or defensive position. And yet we see it all the time. We see guys reaching, engaging. Do you take that away and then we lose a lot of jiu-jitsu? I don't know. Is that the smart thing to do? I think one of the things that sucks is obviously all the weight cutting, and people complain about that and badmouth it. But at the end of the day, a 5'7" lightweight can't make himself taller, but he can drop down to bantamweight and be better down there because he's, his height is, or his reach or length or whatever is more equal to those guys. You'll never get away from cutting weight. It's been going on in boxing forever. It's just boxing has a ton more weight classes. I don't think MMA is deep enough yet in talent. And I wouldn't want to see it, where boxing, a guy's like, hey, I'm a 9 division world champion. Yeah, but that's 12 pounds between the 9 weight classes, because every weight class is 2 pounds, 3 pounds, 1 pound. And if we did that, you would never see a title get defended in MMA. You would never see, the best matchups, because if someone didn't want to fight someone, they'd say, well, I'm going up 3 pounds to this weight class, or I'm dropping down 4 pounds to this weight class. So I appreciate where our weights are. A lot of people say the disparity between 205 and 265. But the problem is look how deep the UFC heavyweight division is. There's like 25 guys on the roster at heavyweight.
Yeah.
Most guys that big are probably playing football, basketball, something like that. So you don't have a ton of heavyweights that you could separate that from like a 220 weight class to a 265 weight class. It just can't be done.
Yeah. So who's your all-time favorite MMA fighter?
Man, it's hard to say. There's a lot of guys that I enjoyed and respected, like a George St. Pierre. I was always excited to see him. Conor McGregor. I value and appreciate everything that he did for this sport. He really did help the sport become mainstream. But then I take it back to old school. I watched UFC 1. I'm 45 years old. And watching Dan Severn, watching Don Fry, watching guys like that was so amazing when you were growing up and watching a single day tournament where these guys are fighting 3 times in one night. Tito Ortiz, I went to college with him, and I've got matches on videotape of him refereeing some of my freestyle matches during the off season. And it's there's a generation of guys that built at talent, and there's guys like Max Holloway today that prove that there's nothing that he's scared of, and he's out there to put entertaining fights on. Justin Gaethje could probably wrestle everybody and have boring fights, but instead he's like, no, I'm going to sit here and bang and do whatever it takes to entertain people. And the guy's got 20 performance of the night's bonuses, and it's really interesting to see. So there's just so much talent out there. There's so many great guys, and I appreciate and respect every single one of them that gets in the cage. That I see a lot of times after a guy loses, he'll go to social media and apologize for it. And my reaction is, who are you apologizing to? The people that didn't buy a ticket to come see you? The people that didn't buy one of your T-shirts? The people that didn't share your post or even mention it? Now you want to apologize to these people that didn't give a crap about you until you lose? No, you don't owe anybody an apology. As soon as you step in that cage and you got licensed, you got your medicals done, you made weight, and you stepped in that cage, you've done everything that's expected of you to do, and I respect you. And that's the difference. Is I think there's a lot of people that are fair weather fans, or there's people that are just so disrespectful that couldn't do what these guys are doing or girls are doing. And so my respect level for them is just absolutely through the roof.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's solid. I mean, I agree with that 100%. And these men and women that step into that octagon, they have so much courage. It's unbelievable.
When you think about like most men, in their 30s, they couldn't run a mile in under 20 minutes. And, we have guys going out there fighting high-level athletes for 25 minutes in a cage, again, at the highest level, where these are the most dangerous people on the face of the earth. To get to that level and to be that conditioned and that tough and that trained is absolutely unbelievable. You take a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, he could probably murder 95% of the world's population with his hands only. And people don't understand how dangerous these guys really, really are in a situation. Everybody thinks, I'm 5'5", 143 pounds, and I'm not scared of very many people. And a lot of people may look at me and say, yeah, I could thrash you. Maybe they could, but if they don't train, they sure as hell aren't going to, and I'm going to embarrass them. And it's why another thing, like I think all law enforcement officers should at least be a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. You would see a huge, drastic change in force used against people because they don't have to pull guns. I had an old judo instructor named John Ogden, total badass. He was a police officer on the Pike in Long Beach in the 50s and 60s, where all the Navy guys were down there and the sailors. You can imagine what it's like down in the port with the sailors coming back from, World War II and all these things, and these guys are drunk animals. He said, I never pulled my gun once. I would just kick their ass if I needed to. And that's a different level of confidence. When you have no confidence in your ability to defend yourself, the first thing you're going to do is escalate, either with your voice or a weapon. And when you have confidence and skills, you're so calm in the face of adversity because you know that if it does kick off, you don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah, 100%, man. Not only that, a lot, if you spend a lot of time training in martial arts, your ego, it goes away. You don't have anything to prove. De-escalate.
I train under Master Laborio, Ricardo Laborio, one of the greatest jiu-jitsu practitioners the world has ever seen. But on top of that, he's one of the nicest, most genuine, humble individuals you'll ever meet. Today's his birthday as well. Happy birthday, Master Laborio. And he has a thing. At his gyms, if you have an ego, you're not welcome. If you come on that mat because you're trying to prove something and hurt people or mess somebody up, you're not for his system. You're not for his school. You're not the kind of guy that he wants to represent him. It's always amazing after every seminar he does, he sits down and talks about that philosophy to people so they understand that you want guys in your gym that are there to help each other, and they're not there to, you see it in some gyms where that blue belt's trying to beat up white belts. Do you think that white belt's going to stay and continue? No, they hate it. They're like, man, I'm getting the crap kicked out of me. This isn't fun. I'm not coming back. Instead, Master Laborio's philosophy is, we should all be helping each other out. And that blue belt or purple belt doesn't need to beat up on lower belts. Brown belt doesn't beat up on lower belts. Who cares if you get submitted? Who cares if you get caught in something? Be there to help each other out. And it's changed the philosophy in a lot of gyms for the better. And that's why I think we're seeing such an uprise in people practicing jiu-jitsu at, gyms that are under Laborio.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like with us, if they're testing for their black belt and they have an ego, we won't pass them. We won't let them test. It's too dangerous. So tell me a little bit more about yourself, man. What's some of your biggest accomplishments?
Well, like you said, I'm an Army veteran. I went in the Army after September 11th. I realized my country needed me, so I signed up. I lived in Germany. I wanted to be stationed over there. I ended up going to the 1st Squadron, 4th United States Cavalry, the unit with the most Medal of Honors ever awarded in any unit in the military. They had 30 Medals of Honors, but 29 recipients because there was one guy that actually won one twice, which is absolutely amazing. I deployed in 2004 to Iraq. I was the first vehicle, the first convoy, the first infantry division to enter Iraq. And we were at the same base that Saddam was brought to after he was captured. I was about a mile from his hole in Adwar, Iraq, and did about 200 combat missions, spent about 13 months deployed, went back to Germany for about another year, went to Fort Irwin, California, was an observer controller trainer there. I think I did like 22 rotations at the National Training Center. Got called up as a reservist and mobilized to El Paso, Texas, then went to Afghanistan by myself as an individual augmentee, as I was in charge of training people for detainee operations in the jails in Afghanistan. So I got to go to the jail in Afghanistan and meet up with all the people that I trained and, brought back and made sure our training was still accurate as things were going on. Then I moved out to Memphis, and here I am today. I've been in a lot of logistics positions and manager and supervisor fields in a lot of companies out here. And 2 years ago was able to finally go full time with Cage Fury.
That's incredible, man. Again, thank you for your service. That's admirable. Thank you.
It was great times.
I'm sure. So do you have any advice for fighters coming up in the game?
Yeah, like I was talking about earlier, is communicate and do what you're supposed to do. If I hit you up and say, hey, what's the status of your medicals? Don't ignore me for 3 days. Immediately answer me, even if it's good or bad. Say, hey, I haven't done this yet. Okay, when is it getting done? It's getting done on this day. Cool. That's all I need to know. Make weight. If you have a contracted weight that you're supposed to make it. If it's a weight you can't make, don't agree to the fight because you're screwing everybody. You're screwing that guy that got sponsors and I paid for travel for him or her to fly in, and I paid for you to fly in, and you don't make weight and the fight gets canceled. You just cost us a lot of money. Luckily, now some states are helping us by suspending fighters that don't meet their contractual obligations and are requiring them to pay us back whatever we spent on a fight that didn't happen because of them not making weight or them not getting a medical done or something like that, what they were supposed to do. Don't wait till the last minute to get medicals done. One of the biggest things I see with blood work is there's a specific Hep B and Hep C test that you got to get. And the Hep B test is the surface antigen. And a lot of people get the antibody test. That's not the right test. And if you wait till the day things are ready to be turned in, the deadline, and you provide me with the wrong blood test, your fight's off. But if you give it to me a week before and we see that it's the wrong one, you can get in and get a new blood draw and get it fixed. Make sure you understand what a lab copy is for blood work. Pulling stuff off my chart, it doesn't fly. It doesn't work. You have to have actual lab copies of your medical exams. And a lot of people will say, well, I'm licensed. Okay, you got licensed in Wyoming. That doesn't mean you're licensed in Pennsylvania. Doesn't mean you're licensed in New Jersey. You are not. That's why I'm sending you this paperwork, because you have to get licensed. Every state is its own state. A lot of people send me their MMA ID thinking, well, I've got this, I'm licensed. All an MMA ID is to track your record. That's not a statewide thing. Every state has their own rules, regulations, bylaws, licensing, fees, medicals, and some states will not accept other states. I can tell you Illinois will not accept any other medicals except the ones on their forms. So the eye exam and physical, even if you got one done in California, Nevada, New Jersey, which are very, top level medicals, they will not accept them. You have to get them done on that form. So pay attention. When a promoter or matchmaker is sending you information, or sending you things that need to get done, it's for a reason. So, and if you have questions, ask. Say, hey, I'm unsure of this medical, or I'm unsure of this. I get a lot where some states require an ophthalmologist for the eye exam, and people go to the eye doctor that they did for a show in Pennsylvania who only requires an optometrist. And they have the optometrist do it when the form literally says must be performed by an ophthalmologist. They turn it in. I look up the thing, and it shows that they're an optometrist. Why did you get it done? Well, it worked in Pennsylvania. You're not in Pennsylvania. That's why it literally says what you need to do on the form. So you need to pay attention. And those little things just drive me crazy because I'm in charge of medicals. So it absolutely drives me crazy when people don't listen. But it also on the doctor's side, like the form literally says must be done by an ophthalmologist, and you're an optometrist and you signed off on it. Why'd you do that? So that's the challenges, but the advice is just get things done you're supposed to do. Train. Don't kill yourself in the gym and get hurt. We just had somebody get hurt yesterday, training really hard and hurt their ribs, and they pulled out of the fight. What are you doing taking shots to the ribs, 3 days away from weigh-ins? I understand some people like to train hard, and I get it, but you've got to be smart enough to know when you need to tone it down when you're 4 days away from a fight.
So is there any organizations that you're a part of that you would like to talk about?
I'm the president of the Tennessee Martial Arts Hall of Fame.
Okay.
And the reason I created that is I'd always kind of wanted to do it. And I actually went to a Martial Arts Hall of Fame induction for Master Ricardo Labordio in Florida. And I really liked the concept and all that. And I had talked to the organizer, and I said, hey, man, I'm really thinking about bringing this to Tennessee and doing something like this. And he said, don't. There's not enough talent there. There's not enough people that deserve it. And I thought, wait a second. 80% of the people that you just inducted aren't even from Florida. They just happened to move to Florida. And I said, you know what? Bet. And I'd really considered doing it. And I talked to, my jiu-jitsu instructor, Robbie Beard, and a couple people about it. And something happened last year that motivated me to get it done. There was a local guy named Dave Ferguson who owns Memphis Judo and Jiu-Jitsu. Fought Dan Severin on an hour's notice, giving up about 80 pounds on a promotion in like 1999. Was really a legend in the Mid-South when it came to MMA. He got diagnosed with cancer, and it was not looking good for him. So I said, you know what? I'm going to start this, and he's going to be the first inductee into the Hall of Fame. Then I was told, you know what? Hey, we think he's getting better. I said, you know what? Let's do this. And I did it on his 50th birthday. I sold 100 tickets. The local VFW, Veterans of Foreign War Post, donated the post for me to use for free. I got the food donated for the event. I got people to donate raffle items and stuff like that. And obviously David had a lot of expenses because he'd been, fighting cancer and getting treatments and having to travel to Houston and all these other places for things. So we ended up raising almost $10,000 for him that night. And I was able to give him a check that night for about $10,000. 6 weeks later, he died. He lost his battle. He actually got a call from his local doctors that just said, we're done. We're not going to treat you anymore. You're going to hospice, and that's it. And another doctor in Phoenix said, I've got something experimental. If you want to fly out here, we'll try it. He flew out there and died the next day. So now his family was, had to bring his body back and all that stuff from Phoenix. And it was an event where all these people, family and friends that came in, and all this, former students and people, it was the last time they got to see him. And if I hadn't had that event, they probably never would have seen him again because of the treatment he was going through and his how frail he was and fragile he was. And he said, minus, getting married and having his kids, it was the greatest day of his life. And that meant a lot to me that I got a board of directors together. I got an event pulled off that quick. I sold that many tickets. I pulled all this stuff off, obviously with the help of a lot of people. I have Eric McMahon, who's who owned gyms with him. I put him on the board of directors. Him and his wife really helped out getting the decor set up and helped me set up the venue. Nicholas Hardmeyer, who started V3 Fights here in Memphis and really got MMA legalized in the state of Tennessee. I have him on the board of directors. He's the current chief marketing officer for the Memphis Zoo. And I have Anthony Manus, who, again, is one of those guys that grew up with like Jeff Mullen, who's the executive director of Nevada now, and Chuck Norris and Bill Superfoot Wallace. I mean, he is really a legend in martial arts. I put him as a board of director as well, and we pulled this event off. And I just did another induction ceremony where I inducted Anthony Manus into the Hall of Fame as well. And I've got a couple more people that I've already got their belts, and I'm just planning ceremonies. And we're looking to expand throughout the state and get some more people. So it's definitely something that I think was long overdue in Tennessee. And I think there's so many people in this sport. You know, martial arts, it's not just mixed martial arts, it's martial arts Hall of Fame. So it could be anybody from karate to kempo to judo to wrestling to anybody that I think is deserving of it. And I have a great board of directors that know a lot of people. And, you know, we've got still this year to induct. I'm going to induct Robbie Beard, owner of USA Karate, who's got 6 gyms locally. He's was considered one of the best karate guys in the entire country, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt under Laborio. I'm also inducting Jeff Mullen, who is the executive director of Nevada. He's from here in Memphis, trained Rampage and trained all kinds of guys here in the Memphis area and really is a legend here. So he's getting inducted as well. We're trying to work on the schedule to make that happen. Bill Superfoot Wallace was also voted in this year. You know, one of the most badass kickboxing guys you'll ever see in your life. So we're really excited about it and getting more people in. And you know, I'm looking at potentially some guys even like Elvis Presley, inducting Elvis Presley and seeing if his wife, Priscilla, would come out and accept the belt for him. She's still local here in Memphis. But there's a lot of talent out here, and we're excited about getting to display that in the Tennessee Martial Arts Hall of Fame.
That's incredible, man. That's incredible. And I'm definitely a huge fan of Bill Superfoot Wallace. He's
a great guy. He comes out, still does seminars, still trains. You know, he could still probably beat the hell out of both of us with one hand. And it's truly amazing to see that. And he was very excited and honored to hear that he had been inducted into the Hall of Fame. So I'm looking forward to getting his belt done and getting a ceremony when he comes in, or I'll go to him, whatever it takes. But we'll get him inducted soon.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Well, thanks for being on the podcast, man, and thank you for your service and everything you're doing for the martial arts community. That's awesome. Keep
Absolutely, you know, and you know, I'm easy to find. I'm the only Jason Lederfine in the world. So if you need me, I'm easy to find. I'm on, you know, Facebook, every social media outlet that you can. My email address is easy. It's jason@cffc.tv. If you're interested in fighting for us, if you're interested in coming to a show, anything like that, just let me know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, we love to have people. We love to get people in. Really, for us, it only takes one event. We just got to get you in one time.
Yeah.
Once we get you to a show, you'll realize, you know, the production, the value we have, the money we put into entertaining the fans, the quality of fights that we have. You know, like I named off that list of guys at our grappling show. How many people get to go to a local show and see all that talent and see all these UFC athletes and stars? That doesn't happen unless you're going to a Conor McGregor pay-per-view and you're paying, you know, $800 for nosebleed seats that you're never going to be within 2 miles of these guys. You know, even our referees, we'll have Keith Peterson, Dan Murgliata, Vitor Shaolin, Eric McMahon, you know, UFC referees even at our shows. So that's one great thing. Like, we don't just get fighters there. Like Eric McMahon, for example, we've even gotten officials to the UFC by working on our events and working on our shows. So we're really proud of that. We're proud of our product. We're proud of what we do in the space. And we're not here to compete with the UFC. We're not trying to say we're bigger than the UFC. We're partners with the UFC.
Yeah.
We are the development league for the UFC. Without us, you know, the UFC would have a lot harder time finding all this talent that's ready to go. They proved themselves with CFFC to get to the UFC. You know, you're not going to fight in the UFC as a debut pro. That doesn't happen. You know, you're going to fight in the UFC when you're 12-2. Well, how do you think you got those 14 fights? You got them with us. And we keep you busy by having 14 MMA events a year. That's how we keep you busy. That's how we keep you on the radar for the UFC. And so we're really looking forward to it. You know, we're in Atlantic City this week, CFFC. What are we at? 157. So our 157th MMA show, not counting amateur shows. Our 157th pro show is going to be this week in Atlantic City, New Jersey, UFC Fight Pass, 7 p.m. Eastern. And then 2 weeks later, we're going to be in Cincinnati, Ohio at the Hard Rock there. So we've got some pretty big fights, some pretty cool things going on, a new venue, a whole new pool of talent that we're going to be drawing from. So UFC Fight Pass, it's $10 a month. I can't tell you how valuable that is.
Yeah.
You can watch every regional promotion that's on Fight Pass live. You can watch the entire UFC. If you want to watch a 1996 Dan Severn versus Royce Gracie, you can watch it on there. It's all included. So invest a little bit in there because it helps get eyes on fighters, get these fighters, the attention they deserve, share their posts, like them, interact with them, send them the positive vibes because they're doing something that, 99% of people will never do in their life. And we respect the hell out of them. We appreciate everybody that tunes into our shows.
That's awesome, man. I'm definitely going to have to check it out sometime. Cincinnati's not too far from me, honestly. So if you guys are in the area regularly, I could probably attend one.
Absolutely. We plan on doing a couple shows a year in Cincinnati. We'll do 2 shows a year in Rockford, Illinois. Most of our shows are in Philly or Atlantic City. We do Tampa, Florida. We've done North Dakota. We're doing Bristol, Virginia. We're all over the place. And we're in that Hard Rock brand, which is really amazing. The Hard Rock it's just amazing venue and amazing partnership. And, these guys love seeing the lights of the Hard Rock and not fighting in some, high school gym or something like that where, there's some bleacher seating and that's it. Like our production is next level. So we appreciate it. And I appreciate you having me on and talking to me today.
Absolutely, man. We'll have to do this again in the future.
Anytime. We're always available.
All right, man. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.